So this is the Harper's magazine. Go out and get yourself a subscription. 1850, the longest running American socio-cultural art uh, sort of literature, politics, history, a lot of great stuff in here. And every month they do something that they're known for, which is the Harper's Index. The Harper's Index is a collection of statistics that they pull together. Here you can see it, the Harper's Index, that they pull together and they stick in here, and the sources are all available for all of this. They have a page, you go flip to it, and you can see the sources. So I'm just going to read these today in the last 10 minutes here of the program, of the first hour of the AntiClimactic NonShow. This is the AntiClimactic NonShow with your host. Now this is the Harper's Index for December. The estimated number of Nigerians killed in clashes between herders and farmers over the first 6 months of 2018, 1,300 Nigerians. In fighting with the Boko Haram, 217. So clashes between herders and farmers, severe. Factor by which more Americans are murdered each year by knives than by rifles, 4. 4 times as many people, 4 times as many Americans are murdered each year by knives than by rifles. The number of states since 2010 that have repealed or weakened knife laws, 21 states have repealed or weakened knife laws. Chance that an American believes that all members of the armed services should be described as heroes, 1 in 2. That a German does, 1 in 7. Number of children since 2007 who have been denied UK citizenship for failing the country's character test to get into the United Kingdom, 517 children since 2007. The minimum age of children to whom the test is applied, 10. You have to be 10 years old to take the character test. Amount of FEMA funding that has been transferred to ICE this year, $9,800,000 from FEMA has been moved to ICE. Number of 200-year floods that Houston, Texas, has suffered since 2015, 4 200-year floods since 2015 is what that stat is. Again, we can look up the sites for the sources are all cited. The beauty of the index is kind of just to accept that for the moment and just read the stats and get kind of hit by them. 4 200-year floods in Houston in the last 3 years is kind of a staggering comment on the potential of climate change, I would say. Okay, percentage of Americans who have had to evacuate their homes because of a natural disaster, 22% of Americans. Now, right now it's California, wildfires, hurricanes, floods. 22% of Americans have had to evacuate their homes because of a natural disaster. Distance in feet by which the Earth's axis of spin has shifted since 1899. 34 feet. The Earth's axis of spin has shifted 34 feet. That's minuscule, of course, compared to the size of the Earth, but interesting. Estimated percentage of that shift that is due to climate change, 40% of the shift due to climate change. Factor by which national parks have warmed more rapidly than the United States as a whole since 1895. 2.5 times more rapidly in national parks. Portion of U.S. households in 2015 that reported keeping temperatures at unhealthy or unsafe levels to save money. 1 in 10 households in the United States reported keeping temperatures at unhealthy or unsafe levels to save money. The average value of a payday loan in the United States, $375. Average amount a borrower ends up spending in fees on a payday loan, $520. Cool, Count Pepper. Nice feedback. Count Pepper is in. Change properties for your family. Yeah, a lot of them are kind of depressing because it's a little bit of a depressing time. But some of them are interesting and funny. Hopefully there'll be some funny ones. Not just bummer ones. All right, percentage of U.S. public employee applicants for student loan forgiveness who have been approved since last year, 0.3. 0.3%. of public employees who apply for forgiveness of their student loans. Okay, portion of millennial men who identify as socialists or democratic socialists. 2 out of 5 millennial men identify as socialists or democratic socialists. Millennial women, 1 out of 5. That's pretty. That shocks me. That totally shocks me. And I find hope in that, Pupper. Right? I don't know. Kind of interesting. Percentage by which women are more likely than men to volunteer for work tasks that probably won't lead to promotions. 48% likelier women. Percentage of Americans who believe that men and women have different leadership styles. 57% of Americans believe that men and women have different leadership styles, just by fact of them being men or women. Percentage of those Americans who think women generally have the better approach. 22% think that women have the better approach, but who believe that men generally do. 15%. So that's a very interesting series of 3 there. 57% of Americans believe that men and women have different leadership styles. 22% think women have the better approach. 15% think that men do. So the remainder picked neither, presumably, of the 35, 37. So 20%, if you will. Portion of U.S. companies that claim to have been affected by prescription drug abuse among their employees. 7 out of 10. Minimum number of U.S. cities that have announced plans to establish supervised drug consumption sites. 5 cities. Estimated number of cities that have such sites worldwide. 100 in the world. Number of people who have ever died of an overdose at one of these sites. 0. That's cool. That's a cool, interesting stat. Shall I run those by again? Minimum number of U.S. cities that have announced plans to establish supervised drug consumption sites. There are 5 cities at least, and there are 100 at least in the world, and the number of people who have ever died of an overdose in those places is 0. Percentage by which a U.S. teenager is more likely to use marijuana than adults in their 50s or 60s. Okay, so a teenager compared to an adult in their 50s or 60s in the year 2011, 121% more likely. But by which adults in their 50s or 60s are more likely to use it than a teenager today, 3% more likely for the 50 to 60-year-olds. So the effect of marijuana legalization and decriminalization is being seen among the population that lived through the prohibition that was so absurd for the last... it remains absurd in many places, shall we say. So that, I think, was expected as well. Okay, factor by which the average South Korean man spends more on skincare than the average man in any other country. 2.3 times as much money spent on skincare. South Koreans. Portion of U.S. men who do not regard changing their underwear daily as very important. That's a quote, because this must be the statistical choice. Behavior, 1 in 5 are like, yeah, that's not very important. Percentage of Americans who say they have and enjoy a large social circle. 16% of Americans. Percentage of cell phone calls in 2017 that came from scammers. 3.7% of phone calls in 2017. Estimated percentage of cell phone calls next year that will. 45%. Percentage of Americans aged 13 to 17 who cite texting as their favorite way to communicate with friends. 35% of teenagers 13 to 17 say they prefer texting. And 32% say they prefer talking in person. So actually not that different, frankly. Percentage of interviews with professional baseball players that feature a variation of the phrase, 1 game at a time. 7% of all interviews with baseball players includes a variation of 1 game at a time. Got to take them 1 game at a time. And a variation of a heck of a game, 50%. 50% of replies from baseball players include the phrase, a heck of a game. 7%, 1 game at a time. Percentage of adults last year who reported doing or learning something interesting the previous day, 46%. That's a pretty cool one. Yeah, I think that the internet and the information society and the digital generation and YouTube, forget it. I can learn more now for sure in a shorter amount of time, given the resources, if I want to. Uh, yeah, the baseball stats are good, Count Pupper. Um, and thanks for enduring all the depressing ones to get to the comedic ones there at the end.